Long ago, before time began to count the years, there were beings called the Immortals. They lived high above the stars, in a realm of light where nothing ever aged, nothing ever broke, and nothing ever ended. The Immortals were beautiful, wise, and powerful. They could move mountains with their thoughts and create worlds with their breath. Yet there was one thing they did not understand: death. To them, life was a never-ending circle. Flowers never wilted, oceans never dried, and hearts never stopped beating. Every sunrise was the same as the one before. The Immortals believed this was perfection, but deep inside they felt something missing, something they could not name. One day they looked down upon Earth and saw creatures living short, fragile lives. These creatures, humans, were born, laughed, loved, cried, and then one day they stopped breathing. The Immortals watched this pattern with curiosity. Why do they end? One of them asked. And why do they cry when one of them disappears? Another replied, because they don't understand eternity. But there was one immortal who thought differently. Her name was Leora. She often gazed upon the earth and felt something stir inside her, a strange pull, a sadness she couldn't explain. Perhaps, she whispered, they understand something that we don't. The others laughed at her. Understand? They are weak, they vanish, they suffer. What could they possibly teach us? But Leora could not let go of her thought. So one night she descended to earth in the shape of a human woman. For the first time she felt the weight of the air, the softness of soil, and the beating of a heart that could one day stop. She lived among humans quietly, learning how they worked, how they loved, and how they feared. She saw children born, and she saw elders grow old. She shared their joy, their pain, and their laughter. But what truly changed her was the first time she saw someone die. It was an old man in her village, kind and gentle. He had told stories to the children every evening. One day he lay down under a tree and closed his eyes. People gathered around him, whispering prayers and shedding tears. She watched in silence. She could not feel his soul anymore. It was gone. She reached out with her immortal senses, but there was nothing to find. The man had left behind only his body and the memories in people's hearts. Leora was confused. She asked a young woman beside her, "Where did he go?" The woman wiped her tears and said, "He's gone to a place we can't see, but he'll live in our hearts forever." That night, Leora sat alone under the same tree. She touched the ground where the man had been buried and tried to understand what humans felt. And then she realized death wasn't just an ending. It was a reminder of how precious every moment was. Humans loved deeply because they knew time was short. They cared because they knew they could lose. Days passed into months, and Leora stayed. She grew close to the people, and they loved her back. But time, which never touched her before, began to show its mark. Her skin wrinkled, her hair turned silver, and her strength faded. She did not resist it. She welcomed it. She finally understood what it meant to live, not forever, but fully. One evening, when the sun was setting and the sky was painted gold and red, she felt her heart slowing down. Her human friends gathered around her, holding her hands, crying softly. Leora smiled and said, "Don't cry. I finally understand the beauty of goodbye." Her eyes closed, and her immortal soul rose from her body like light. In the realm above, the other immortals felt something strange. A warmth spread through their hearts, an emotion they had never felt before. Leora's spirit returned, carrying something new, the memory of love and loss. The immortals gathered around her glowing presence. "What have you learned?" they asked. Leora looked at them and spoke softly. "I learned that to live forever without loss is not life. It is silence. Humans taught me that death gives meaning to everything. Every smile, every touch, every word matters because it won't last forever. And when something ends, love doesn't die. It transforms into memory. The immortals were silent. They looked down upon the earth again, but now they saw it differently. They saw beauty not in perfection, but in imperfection. They saw meaning in beginnings and endings, in tears and laughter, in the fragile nature of existence. Curious, more immortals went down to earth to live among humans. Some became poets, some became healers, and some just wandered, learning the art of letting go. They learned how humans held funerals, how they said goodbye, how they remembered those they loved. Each immortal discovered that every farewell carried a promise that love continues, even beyond death. One immortal named Kale met a human child who was very ill. The child smiled despite his pain. Kale asked him, "Aren't you afraid of dying?" The boy said, "No, because I'll become a star. My mother told me stars are souls watching over us." Kale looked up at the night sky later, and for the first time he saw it not as endless space, but as a home for those who had moved on. The immortals began to change. They no longer feared the idea of endings. Instead, they celebrated them as part of a greater cycle. When a leaf fell, they whispered blessings. When a flower withered, they smiled, knowing it would bloom again in another season. Still, one question remained among them. If they were truly immortal, would they ever experience death themselves? Leora smiled and said, "Maybe one day when we are ready. Death is not punishment, it is a teacher. And when we learn all its lessons, we will not fear it, we will welcome it." The others nodded in awe. The realm of the immortals was no longer cold and distant. It was now filled with warmth, with the echoes of laughter, with songs about love and memory. They began to tell stories of humans, not as weak beings, but as teachers of the universe. Time passed, and even though the immortals still could not die, they began to live differently. They no longer counted endless days, they cherished every sunrise. They painted the skies, played with stars, and sent dreams to humans at night. Whenever a human said goodbye, they listened closely, for in that goodbye they heard something sacred, the sound of life itself. One day, a child on earth whispered a prayer before sleeping, "To the ones above, please take care of my father." The immortals heard the prayer and gently guided the father's spirit into the stars. Leora smiled from above, knowing that the bridge between humans and immortals was now built, not through power, but through understanding. And so, the immortals who once could not understand death finally learned the truth. Life and death are not enemies, but partners. Without one, the other has no meaning. The immortals began to whisper these words whenever they saw a soul leave the world. Goodbye is not the end. It is the beginning of remembering. In the end, they realized that humans, though mortal, carried a strength far greater than eternity, the strength to love, to lose, and to live again. Death had once been a mystery to the immortals, but humans taught them the most powerful truth of all, that love makes even goodbyes eternal. And so, in the quiet corners of the universe, whenever a star fades away, the immortals remember what humans taught them, that every ending is just another kind of forever.